Welcome to Dreamtime Science, where curiosity meets tranquility and knowledge flows like a gentle stream. Here we explore the wonders of our universe at a pace that soothes the mind. You know what's fascinating? How a single bite of food can surprise your senses, how the flavors seem to shift and dance right there in your mouth. I've been thinking about why that happens, and it's like a little hidden story unfolding on your tongue, full of tiny changes and delicious secrets. Tonight, I'd love to share what makes those flavors come alive and transform in ways you might never have noticed before. Your support through likes and subscriptions keeps this tranquil laboratory of knowledge glowing softly. Tell me in the comments, what scientific concept has always fascinated you? Let's prepare for tonight's journey. Find your most comfortable position, let tension float away from your body, and take 3 slow, peaceful breaths. As the world slips into night, and as you lie cocooned in quiet, let us drift together into a realm that is at once ancient and ever new, the realm of taste, that most intimate and evocative of senses. In the hush where wakefulness and dream intermingle, we turn our attention to a symphony that plays just behind your lips, on the stage of your tongue and palate, the Symphony of Flavours. Taste is both a primal and a poetic sense, woven into the oldest myths of humankind and the wildest imaginings of science fiction. Picture the first humans, huddled around their flickering fires, daring to put unknown berries to their lips. For them, taste was not merely pleasure, but survival. The sharp warning of bitterness might signal poison. The bright tang of acidity could mean fruit ripe and wholesome, while sweetness promised precious energy in a world of scarcity. Long before the written word, long before cities and science, our ancestors listened to the language of taste, and it whispered to them of what was safe, what was dangerous, what was rare, and what was abundant. Yet even as taste anchored us to the earth, to our bodies and our needs, it was not so easily tamed. Across the centuries, taste became a canvas for culture and imagination. Picture the lavish banquets of ancient Rome, where garum, a pungent fermented fish sauce, was drizzled over everything, its salty and umami notes a mark of sophistication. In the courts of the Mughal emperors, chefs conjured dishes of saffron and rosewater, sweet and perfumed and rich, designed not only to nourish but to seduce the senses. And in the bustling streets of modern Tokyo, a bowl of ramen offers a tapestry of taste, the deep, mysterious umami of broth, the springy, salty noodles, the soft, sweet resonance of marinated eggs. But taste is not only the domain of history. In the pages of science fiction, authors have dreamed of flavors yet unimagined. Consider the food machines of starships, conjuring meals from pure energy, or the alien feasts described in the works of Ursula K. Le Guin, where the meaning of taste is woven into the fabric of otherworldly cultures. In the speculative kitchens of the future, taste becomes a code, a language for sharing memory, identity, and even emotion. Why do we taste what we do? And how, precisely, does the tongue translate the chemistry of the world into the music of flavor? Beneath the poetry, there is a choreography of molecules and nerves, a dance of signals and perceptions, shaped by evolution and by chance. To begin, let us travel inward to the landscape of the tongue. If you were to peer closely at its surface, you would not find the smooth plane you might expect, but a forest of tiny protrusions called papillae. Some are mushroom-shaped, some are ridged or leaf-like, and among them are clustered the taste buds, each a microscopic chamber where the magic happens. These taste buds are not visible to the naked eye, but they are legion. Each human tongue boasts thousands, scattered not just along its surface but also on the soft palate, the inner cheeks, even the upper throat. Within these taste buds, specialized cells wait in readiness, their membranes studded with receptors, tiny molecular locks, each designed to fit a particular key. When you take a bite of apple or a sip of tea, the chemicals dissolved in your saliva flow into the crevices of your tongue, seeking out these receptors. Some molecules fit perfectly, snapping into place and sending a signal rushing along nerves to your brain. Others pass by unnoticed, unfelt, unsavoured. There are 5 basic tastes, the foundation stones upon which all the world's flavours are built. Sweetness, the taste of promise, of sugars and ripe fruit, of honey and warmth. Sourness, the taste of warning and of freshness, the sharp brightness of lemon or vinegar, the tang that makes the mouth water. Saltiness, the taste of life's necessity, the mineral essence of the sea and of sweat, of tears and preservation. Bitterness, the taste of caution, of complex chemicals that often signal danger, but in careful measure bring depth and intrigue to foods like coffee, cocoa, and kale. And umami, the taste of fullness, of savouriness, the rich, mouth-filling sense found in broths, aged cheese, mushrooms, and meats, first formally identified in Japan, but present in dishes from every corner of the globe. Each of these tastes is detected through a distinct family of receptors. For sweetness, there are T1R2 and T1R3, working together to sense sugars and some artificial sweeteners. For bitterness, a vast array of receptors, more than any other taste, stand guard, each attuned to a different potential toxin, for nature is never short of ways to defend itself. Sourness is sensed when acids release protons that infiltrate taste cells, triggering a cascade of ionic change. Saltiness is detected when sodium ions slip through channels in cell membranes, setting off an electrical signal. And umami arises from the detection of glutamate and certain nucleotides, molecules that hint at protein and nourishment, at the heartiness of cooked meats or slow-simmered broth. It is a common myth, often repeated in textbooks and classrooms, that different regions of the tongue are responsible for different tastes. Sweetness at the tip, bitterness at the back, sourness at the sides, and so forth. This notion can be traced to a mistranslation and overinterpretation of early 20th century studies, where slight variations in sensitivity were mistaken for absolute boundaries. In truth, each taste bud, wherever it resides, is equipped to detect all 5 basic tastes. The entire tongue, indeed the entire mouth, forms a unified orchestra, each section capable of playing every note, though some may be a touch more sensitive here or there. If you dab a bit of salt at the tip of your tongue or at the sides, you will taste saltiness just the same. The same goes for sweetness, bitterness, and the rest. But the dance of taste does not end at the receptors. The signals they generate are ferried along cranial nerves, the facial, glossopharyngeal, and vagus nerves, all converging in the gustatory cortex of the brain. Here, the raw data of molecule and ion becomes sensation, and sensation becomes experience. The brain does not simply register sweet or bitter in isolation. It weaves these notes into a tapestry, combining them with smell, with texture, with memory, and with mood, to create the full and unique symphony of flavour that you perceive. Culture, too, shapes how we hear this symphony. In some cultures, bitterness is celebrated, a mark of maturity and refinement, as in the dark, complex teas of China or the hoppy beers of Belgium. In others, sweetness reigns, woven into rituals and holidays, a taste of comfort and celebration. Children everywhere are drawn to sugar, for their bodies and brains are growing and hungry for energy, but as we age, we learn to appreciate the subtler notes, the bittersweet, the tangy, the umami-laden. Taste is not only a matter of biology, but of history, of geography, of tradition. It is a marker of identity, a shaper of community, a spark for stories and for song. Consider how the 5 basic tastes have given rise to 1,000 cuisines. The interplay of sweet and sour in Thai dishes, the bold saltiness of cured meats in Italian antipasti, the deep umami of dashi in Japanese cooking. Even within a single meal, the balance of tastes is carefully orchestrated. A squeeze of lemon to cut through the richness of fish, a sprinkle of salt to awaken the sweetness of chocolate, a hint of bitterness in a salad to refresh the palate. Chefs, home cooks, and eaters alike become conductors and musicians in the orchestra of taste, blending and layering, contrasting and harmonizing in search of that fleeting, perfect chord. Science fiction has not ignored this most sensual of senses. In imagined futures, tastes become programmable, infinitely customizable. In the world of Star Trek, the replicator can produce any dish on command, its flavors calibrated to the desires of the user. In the dystopian visions of Brave New World, pleasure is regulated, taste reduced to a mechanism of control. And in the more whimsical tales of Douglas Adams, the pan-galactic gargle blaster promises an experience like having your brain smashed out by a slice of lemon wrapped round a large gold brick. Testament to the power of taste, to astonish, to overwhelm, to entrance. In these stories, the act of tasting is never trivial. It is a window into the soul, a way to explore what it means to be human, or even, perhaps, what it means to be something else. Beneath the flights of fancy, there is always the grounding of chemistry and physiology. The 5 basic tastes are the pillars, but the true complexity of flavour arises from their interplay and from the ways in which taste collaborates with the other senses. Smell, especially, is an indispensable partner. Without it, even the richest meal becomes strangely flat and indistinct, as anyone with a blocked nose can attest. Yet taste alone, even in its purity, is more than a simple signal. It is anticipation and memory, desire and aversion, pleasure and relief. The story of taste is also a story of adaptation and survival. Our sensitivity to bitterness, for instance, is not accidental. Many plant toxins are bitter, and those who could detect and avoid them were more likely to thrive. Conversely, the allure of sweetness is rooted in the ancient scarcity of sugar. For most of human history, sweetness was a rare and precious thing, a sign of ripe fruit or honey, a brief and vital burst of energy. Salt, too, was once so valuable that it served as currency, and the craving for it is etched deep into our genes, a reminder of the body's need to maintain balance and function. But perhaps most mysterious of all is umami, the taste that was only formally recognized in the 20th century, though it has been savored for millennia. The word itself means deliciousness in Japanese, and it is unlocked by glutamate, an amino acid abundant in meats, aged cheeses, tomatoes, and fermented foods. Long before the science was understood, cooks around the world instinctively layered umami into their dishes, a dash of fish sauce in Southeast Asia, a shaving of parmesan in Italy, a spoonful of miso in Japan. Umami is the taste of depth, of sustenance, of satisfaction, a whisper from the body that this food is nourishing, that it will sustain and strengthen. As you rest in the gentle dark, reflect on the fact that every taste you have ever known, every sweet, every sour, every hint of salt, every trace of bitterness, every echo of umami, is the result of molecules meeting receptors, of nerves firing and brains awakening. It is the product of millions of years of evolution, of countless meals shared and stories told. Taste unites us with our ancestors and with each other, even as it opens windows into worlds beyond our own. So let your mind wander, for there is more to this symphony yet to be revealed. In the next movement, we shall journey beyond the tongue to the realms where taste meets smell and flavour unfolds in all its complexity. For now, the orchestra plays on, the notes of the 5 basic tastes mingling in the quiet of the night, awaiting the next layer, the next revelation, as the story of flavour continues to unfurl. In the dim hush of a late evening kitchen, shadows lengthen across the counter, and a single ripe strawberry rests on a wooden board, Its tiny seeds glint, and its scent drifts through the air, tart, sweet, almost floral. You pick it up, feeling the cool weight in your palm, and as your teeth sink gently through the crimson flesh, a rush of sensation blooms in your mouth. Sweetness washes over your tongue, followed by the faintest whisper of acidity, while something almost green, reminiscent of the fresh garden, lingers at the edge of your awareness. You are not simply tasting the strawberry, you are experiencing a symphony of chemical events, a dance of molecules that transforms a humble fruit into a cascade of delight. To understand this nightly ballet of taste, we must peer beyond the familiar and cozy surface of the kitchen into the world of the infinitesimal, where molecules swirl and collide, where saliva is not just wetness but a complex chemical cocktail, and where your own biology shapes every note of flavor you perceive. Here, taste is not a passive act, but an intricate conversation between food and body, a living chemistry that begins the moment a morsel touches your lips. Let us begin with the act of tasting itself. When you place that strawberry in your mouth, the first thing that happens is not taste at all, it is contact. The fruit's surface meets your tongue and palate, and the warmth of your breath begins to coax volatile molecules into the air. Some molecules dissolve in your saliva, while others drift toward the back of your throat and nose, each embarking on a different path toward perception. At this moment, your mouth is a kind of chemical laboratory. It is not only a space for chewing and swallowing, but also a cradle for reactions that will determine what you sense. The cells lining your tongue are covered with tiny structures called papillae, some shaped like little mushrooms, others like ridged ramps or fine, feathery filaments. Tucked within these papillae are taste buds, each a collection of about 50 to 100 specialized cells arranged like the petals of a flower around a central pore. It is through these taste buds that the molecular world is translated into human sensation. The process begins at the surface of the taste bud, where the tips of taste receptor cells extend into the tiny pore, ready to greet the world. As the strawberry's juices mingle with your saliva, they release a medley of molecules, sugars like glucose and fructose, organic acids such as citric and malic acid, and a scattering of trace compounds. These molecules are not simply present, they are active, seeking binding partners among the receptors on your tongue. Each taste receptor cell is specialized, tuned to recognize one of the 5 basic tastes: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, or umami. When a sugar molecule like glucose encounters a sweet receptor, it fits into the receptor's protein structure much like a key into a lock. This bond triggers a cascade of events within the cell, leading to the generation of an electrical signal. The signal is relayed along a network of nerves, heading toward your brain with a message, sweet. In parallel, you may sense the tartness of the strawberry's acid. Sour taste receptors are not quite so choosy about molecular shape. Instead, they are sensitive to the presence of hydrogen ions, which are abundant in acids. When the acid from the fruit dissociates in your saliva, it releases these tiny, energetic ions, which flood into the taste cell and alter its electrical charge. The cell fires off its own signal, sour. Salt, too, has its own dedicated pathway. The taste of saltiness arises primarily from sodium ions, which pass directly through channels in the cell membrane, generating a swift and unmistakable sensation. Bitter tastes, by contrast, are detected by a large family of receptors, each one evolved to recognize a different class of potentially harmful compounds, a vital defense mechanism against the poisons that many plants employ. And then there is umami, the savory richness first described in Japanese cuisine and later traced to the presence of glutamate and certain nucleotides. When these molecules bind to their receptors, they create a sense of depth and fullness, rounding out the flavor of foods as disparate as ripe tomatoes, aged cheese, and the flesh of cooked meats. Yet as you chew the strawberry, flavor continues to unfold in a way that transcends these 5 basic tastes. Herein lies the heart of a common confusion. Taste and flavor are not the same. Taste is a narrow phenomenon, limited to the detection of those 5 categories by the taste buds on your tongue. Flavor, on the other hand, is a far grander experience, woven from taste, smell, touch, temperature, and even sound. The flavor of the strawberry emerges not only from its sweetness and acidity, but also from the fragrant esters that evaporate into your nasal cavity, the gentle resistance of its flesh as you bite, the coolness that spreads across your tongue, and the faint, crisp sound as its skin yields. To see this distinction in action, consider what happens when you pinch your nose and eat a jelly bean. With your nose closed, you may notice only sweetness, perhaps a hint of sourness. The jelly bean could be cherry, or it could be watermelon. The taste alone offers little clue. But the moment you release your nose, a rush of volatile molecules floods the olfactory receptors high in your nasal passages. Suddenly, the unique aroma of cherry or watermelon reveals itself, and the flavor becomes complete and unmistakable. This is retronasal olfaction, the process by which aromas from food in your mouth travel upward and backward into the nasal cavity, painting the intricate details of flavor upon the broad canvas of taste. Returning to our kitchen laboratory, let us look more closely at the role of saliva. Saliva is more than a simple lubricant. It is a dynamic fluid, brimming with enzymes, proteins, and ions, each playing a part in the unfolding chemistry. As you chew, the enzyme amylase begins to break down starches into simpler sugars, subtly altering the sweetness of foods like bread or potato. Lipase, another enzyme present in smaller amounts, starts to digest fats, releasing free fatty acids that contribute their own faint flavors and mouthfeel. Saliva also serves as a solvent, helping to dissolve taste molecules so they can reach the receptors on your tongue. Some compounds, like the sugars in honey or ripe fruit, dissolve readily and are sensed almost immediately. Others, such as the pungent capsaicin in chili peppers or the cooling menthol in mint, interact with entirely different receptors known as the trigeminal nerve endings, which convey sensations of heat, cold, or irritation rather than taste per se. In this way, the boundaries between taste, flavor, and somatic sensation blur, merging into the seamless tapestry of eating. But the story does not end with the molecules in the food or the chemistry of your saliva. It stretches further into the realm of individuality, why 2 people biting into the same strawberry may perceive its flavor in subtly different ways. The reasons are as intricate as they are fascinating. One thread lies in genetics. Each of us carries a unique set of genes that code for the structure of our taste and olfactory receptors. Some people possess variants of the TS2R38 gene, for instance, that make them especially sensitive to certain bitter compounds found in cruciferous vegetables like broccoli or Brussels sprouts. To these individuals, such foods may taste overpoweringly bitter, while to others the sensation is muted or absent. Similarly, variations in the receptors for sweet, umami, or even the spicy burn of capsaicin shape not only our preferences, but the very world of flavors we inhabit. Age, too, plays its part. Infants are born with a heightened sense of sweetness, perhaps an evolutionary nudge to favor their mother's milk. As we age, the number and sensitivity of our taste buds gradually decline, and the flavors that once dazzled us may seem fainter or require more intense stimulation. Illness, medications, or even the weather can alter the landscape of taste, tilting the balance of perception in unpredictable ways. Culture and experience layer further complexity. A person raised in a cuisine rich in fermented foods may savor the umami tang of miso or kimchi, while someone unaccustomed to such tastes might find them alien or overpowering. Memory, too, weaves itself into the story. The scent of cinnamon may evoke a grandmother's kitchen, amplifying its warmth and sweetness beyond what molecules alone could convey. And then there are the silent guests at every meal, the invisible microbiome that lines our mouths and guts, subtly transforming the chemistry of what we eat. These microbial companions can release their own flavors, alter the breakdown of food, and even modulate our receptors' responses. The dance of molecules is never a solo performance, but a complex choreography involving not only the food and our bodies, but the teeming communities that live within us. In moments of quiet, as you sit with the last taste of strawberry lingering on your tongue, you might ponder how much of what you perceive is shaped by the world within as much as the world without. The simple act of eating becomes a marvel of interaction, a nightly alchemy that transforms the material of the earth, sun-ripened fruit, grains of salt, droplets of honey, into sensation, memory, and meaning. As the kitchen quiets and darkness gathers, the dance of molecules continues unseen, even as your awareness drifts towards sleep. The next mouthful, the next breath, will bring new encounters, new combinations, new notes in the endless symphony of flavor. And somewhere, beyond the hush, the question lingers: what other mysteries lie hidden in the chemistry of what we taste and what we feel as food becomes part of our very selves? To truly understand the world of taste, one must first slip into the shoes of those who have dared to measure the unmeasurable, to probe the delicate mysteries of flavor with the persistence and curiosity of scientists, poets, and dreamers alike. The language of taste, at once ancient and ever-renewing, has beckoned explorers from across centuries, inviting them to bridge the chasm between invisible sensation and observable fact. Long before modern laboratories hummed with the gentle whir of analytical instruments, the quest to decode taste began with the careful cataloguing of experience itself. The earliest philosophers, pondering the nature of the senses, divided tastes into elemental categories: sweet, sour, bitter, salty, each one thought to correspond to the fundamental forces that shaped earth, water, air, and fire. Aristotle, ever the classifier, proposed a taxonomy of flavors as intricate as the stars, believing that taste, like music, could be broken down into notes and chords. But such musings remained, for centuries, more poetic than empirical, until the tools of observation caught up with the ambitions of the mind. With the coming of the Enlightenment and the slow blossoming of experimental science, taste was drawn, reluctantly at first, onto the stage of measurement. Researchers invented elaborate schemes to map the tongue, pressing drops of vinegar or honey onto its surface and noting the places where sourness or sweetness bloomed. The now familiar tongue map, with its regions assigned to specific tastes, was born from these efforts. Though later shown to be an oversimplification, the image persists in textbooks and memories, a testament to the seductive power of a neatly ordered world. But taste, as anyone who has ever savoured a ripe peach or recoiled from a bitter herb knows, is never so tidy. It is a symphony, not a solo, and its notes blend and clash in ways that defy simple mapping. Scientists, undeterred, began to devise more subtle experiments, inventing tests as clever as they were revealing. One such method, known as the triangle test, asks participants to taste 3 samples, 2 identical, 1 different, and identify the odd one out. This simple design, elegant in its minimalism, allows researchers to probe the limits of human discrimination. Can a slight change in sugar concentration be detected in tea? Does the addition of a trace of salt alter the character of chocolate? The triangle test, still used today in sensory science labs and food industry panels, lets us peer into the fine-tuned machinery of our own discernment. But to understand taste in its fullness, one must look beyond the tongue to the great orchestra of the senses, for it is not only taste buds that play their part, but the nose, the eyes, the ears, the whole theatre of the body. Consider for a moment the act of eating an apple. Bite into its crisp flesh, and a cascade of sensations unfurls. Sweetness and acidity dance across the tongue. The aroma of fresh-cut grass rises to the nostrils. The echo of crunch resounds in the jaw, and the gleam of red or green skin sets the mind's expectations alight. Unraveling this tangle requires ingenuity, and so, over the years, scientists have devised experiments as playful as they are profound. In the mid-20th century, a French physiologist named Jean-Noël Capferat conducted a now famous experiment to tease apart the contributions of taste and smell. Volunteers were presented with a series of jelly beans, each a vivid jewel of artificial flavour. With noses pinched shut, the participants could often report little more than sweet or sour. But as soon as they released their grip, the full symphony of flavours, strawberry, lemon, apple, rushed in, as if from behind a curtain. The lesson was simple but transformative. Much of what we call taste is, in fact, a marriage of taste and smell. The nose, silent partner at the banquet, is the true conjurer of flavour. To make this invisible magic visible, scientists turned to tools that could map the brain's response to taste and aroma. Functional MRI scans, shining their watchful gaze upon the insular cortex and orbitofrontal cortex, revealed a ballet of neural activity, areas lighting up in response not just to chemical compounds, but to the expectations and memories those compounds evoked. The act of tasting, it became clear, is not just a chemical event, but a cognitive one, a dialogue between molecules and mind. Yet even as researchers mapped the brain, they found themselves drawn back to the periphery, to the subtle machinery of the mouth. The tongue, once thought to be a simple canvas for taste, revealed itself as a patchwork of specialized receptors, each attuned to a different class of molecules. Geneticists, peering into our DNA, discovered that the ability to taste certain bitter compounds was controlled by specific genes, a fact that explained why some people find broccoli unbearably sharp, while others taste only its gentle sweetness. The science of taste, it seemed, was as much about diversity as it was about universality. But the story does not end with molecules and genes. For even the most exquisitely tuned receptor is but one player in a larger drama. Researchers began to wonder, how do other senses shape our experience of flavour? The answer, uncovered through a series of whimsical and ingenious experiments, would prove both surprising and profound. In the 1970s, a psychologist named John E. Amoore conducted a study with a simple but revealing twist. Participants were served drinks of identical flavour but different colours, red, green, yellow, and asked to describe what they tasted. Time and again, people reported flavours that matched the colour, not the chemical reality. A red-tinted lemon-lime drink, for example, was described as tasting like cherry or like strawberry, even though its true flavour lay elsewhere. The eyes, it seemed, could overrule the tongue, a phenomenon now known as colour-induced taste expectation. This interplay between sight and taste has been explored in ever more playful ways. In a celebrated experiment at Oxford University, diners were served a meal in complete darkness. Deprived of visual cues, they found themselves adrift, struggling to identify even the most familiar foods. The shape, colour and arrangement of a dish, it turns out, are as much a part of its flavour as the ingredients themselves. But sight is not the only sense to wield such power. Texture, too, weaves its spell. The feel of food in the mouth, its creaminess, crunch, slipperiness, or chewiness shapes the entire experience of eating. In the 1990s, Dutch researcher Jozef Engelen and colleagues used a device called a texture analyzer to study how variations in fat content altered the perceived creaminess of dairy products. Participants, blind to the true composition of the samples, consistently rated smoother, fattier products as sweeter, even when the sugar content was identical. Texture, it seems, can masquerade as taste. And then there is temperature, that subtle modulator of sensation. A spoonful of ice-cold soup, a sip of molten chocolate, each reveals new facets of flavor as temperature rises or falls. Scientists have found that cold can blunt the perception of sweetness, while heat amplifies the intensity of certain aromas. In carefully controlled experiments, participants are asked to taste solutions at different temperatures, reporting subtle shifts in flavor that betray the underlying dance of molecules and receptors. The results remind us that taste is not fixed but fluid, shaped by the environment as much as by chemistry. Perhaps most surprising of all is the influence of sound. In recent years, researchers have discovered that the noises we hear while eating can alter our perception of flavor and texture. The crackle of a crisp potato chip, the fizz of a carbonated drink, the ambient music in a restaurant, all play a part in shaping our experience. At Oxford's Cross-Modal Research Laboratory, Professor Charles Spence conducted an experiment in which volunteers ate potato chips while listening to recordings of their own chewing, manipulated in real time. When the crunching sounds were amplified, participants rated the chips as fresher and more flavorful. The ear, it seems, is an unheralded gatekeeper of taste. Such findings invite us to reconsider the very nature of flavor. It is not, as once imagined, a simple product of tongue and taste bud, but a multi-sensory construction, a fragile, shifting tapestry woven from sight, smell, touch, temperature, and sound. Each sense contributes its own thread. Tug one, and the whole fabric trembles. To disentangle this web, scientists have developed ever more sophisticated tools. Gas chromatography, for instance, allows researchers to separate and identify the volatile compounds that give foods their characteristic aromas. By pairing this with mass spectrometry, a technique that weighs molecules with exquisite precision, they can reconstruct the aroma fingerprint of a ripe strawberry or a freshly baked loaf of bread. But even the most detailed chemical analysis cannot predict how these molecules will be perceived by the human brain. Sensory panels, composed of trained tasters, are enlisted to bridge this gap, describing and rating the flavors of foods with a vocabulary as precise as that of a wine critic or a perfumer. In parallel, psychophysicists have devised mathematical models to capture the complex interplay between stimulus and perception. Using statistical techniques, they quantify how changes in concentration, texture, or temperature affect the perceived intensity of taste. These models reveal that our response to flavor is rarely linear. A small increase in sweetness may be barely noticeable, while a subtle shift in bitterness can transform pleasure into aversion. All the while, neuroscientists peer into the brain itself, tracing the pathways by which signals from the tongue, nose, and skin converge upon the insular cortex, a region sometimes called the gustatory cortex. Here, flavor is not merely registered but synthesized, integrated with memory, emotion, and expectation. Functional MRI studies show that anticipation alone can light up these regions, priming the brain for pleasure or disappointment before a morsel ever touches the tongue. With each experiment, each clever device, each patient observation, the language of taste grows richer, more nuanced. It becomes clear that taste is not merely a sense, but a conversation, a dialogue between body and world, between past and present, between expectation and reality. The tools we use to study it, from the humble triangle test to the dazzling powers of modern brain imaging, are themselves part of this unfolding story. And yet, for all our advances, there remain mysteries. Why, for example, does the flavor of a childhood food linger so vividly in memory, years or even decades later? How does the mind weave together the disparate signals of tongue and nose, mouth and ear into a seamless whole? These questions beckon, inviting us onward. As the lights of the laboratory flicker low and the instruments fall silent, we are left with a sense of wonder at the ingenuity of those who study taste and at the complexity of the senses themselves. The next step in this journey leads us deeper still into the realm where biology meets culture, where evolution and tradition shape the flavors we crave and the foods we cherish. There is a quiet, almost sacred moment that occurs before the first bite, a hush as a spoon hovers above a bowl, or as steam curls from a freshly baked loaf, carrying with it the promise of comfort or adventure. In that suspended instant, taste is not yet taste, but potential, a universe of sensations waiting to be awakened and transformed by the meeting of food and mind. The journey from the chemistry of a molecule to the poetry of a meal is long and winding, crossing the boundaries of biology, memory, culture, and meaning. It is here, in the liminal space between sensation and story, that we find the philosophy of flavour. Consider the paradox at the heart of taste. It is at once utterly personal and deeply universal. The tang of a green apple may evoke for one person the orchard of a childhood summer, for another the sharp shock of newness, and for yet another nothing at all but a crisp, acidic note among many. But there is more to this than the quirks of individual memory. Embedded within every taste is an ancient dialogue between the body and the world, a negotiation shaped by evolution, culture, and circumstance. Why do we find certain foods delicious and others revolting? The question may seem simple, but it is a thread that unravels into a tapestry woven from biology, psychology, and philosophy. At the core, taste is a survival sense. Bitterness warns of potential poison. Sweetness signals energy-rich sugars. Saltiness reveals the presence of essential minerals. Umami, once mysterious, is the taste of glutamates, the building blocks of protein. Sourness, the tang of fermentation or unripe fruit, is both invitation and warning, sometimes a sign of spoilage, sometimes a harbinger of transformation. These primal associations have been sculpted over millennia, encoding the lessons of ancestors who survived by heeding the signals of their tongues. Yet as soon as we try to pin taste to mere biology, it slips away into the realm of culture and memory. Across the world, what counts as a delicacy in one place may be an object of disgust in another. Fermented shark in Iceland, durian in Southeast Asia, pungent cheeses in rural France. Each is a testament to the extraordinary malleability of human preference. The boundaries of deliciousness are not written in our genes alone, but in the stories we tell about food, the rituals that surround it, and the memories it evokes. Memory, indeed, is the secret ingredient in every meal. The taste of a grandmother's soup, the crisp bite of an apple on the first day of school, the smoky char of a street vendor's grill, these are not just sensations, but portals. When we eat, we do not merely consume calories or nutrients, we consume moments, places, and people. The brain, it turns out, is a masterful archivist. The olfactory bulb, where smell first enters the brain, lies adjacent to the amygdala and hippocampus, centers of emotion and memory. This anatomical intimacy ensures that flavor is always more than just chemical detection. It is inseparable from feeling and recollection. Have you ever been swept away by a flavor only to find yourself suddenly standing in a kitchen long vanished, or in the company of voices long silent? It is no accident, but the architecture of the brain itself, an evolutionary adaptation perhaps, but also a kind of existential poetry. To taste is to remember, and to remember is to feel alive. But why do we crave novelty, seeking out new tastes and textures with such fervor? And why at other times do we return to the familiar with almost religious devotion? The answer lies, perhaps, in the dual nature of taste, as both comfort and curiosity. Novelty in flavour can be a way of exploring the world, a safe adventure for the senses. The first bite of a fiery pepper, the delicate bitterness of dark chocolate, the elusive perfume of truffle. These are journeys into the unknown, rehearsals for the larger uncertainties of life. At the same time, familiar tastes are anchors. They tether us to identity, to home, to the rhythms of the seasons and the cycles of celebration. Across cultures, special dishes mark the turning of the year: mooncakes for the Mid-Autumn Festival, hot cross buns for Easter, latkes for Hanukkah. Through these rituals, taste becomes a form of timekeeping, a way of inscribing meaning onto the calendar of our lives. The philosopher Jean-Anselme Brillat-Savarin, whose Physiology of Taste remains a touchstone for gastronomes, wrote that the discovery of a new dish does more for the happiness of mankind than the discovery of a new star. There is hyperbole here, but also a grain of truth. For in the act of eating, we unite the earthly and the ephemeral, the raw materials of the world transformed by fire and imagination, the fleeting pleasures of the palate transformed into memory and meaning. Yet the very subjectivity of taste raises questions that have occupied philosophers for centuries. Is there such a thing as a good taste, or is deliciousness merely a matter of opinion? Can science tell us why one source delights and another disappoints? Or are such judgments forever beyond the reach of measurement and theory? Science, for its part, has made remarkable strides in understanding the mechanisms of taste. We now know, for instance, that genetic differences shape our perception of bitterness, that cultural exposure can train the palate to appreciate even the most challenging flavors, and that the brain integrates taste, smell, texture, temperature, and even sound into the seamless experience we call flavor. But the pleasure of a meal is not found in molecules alone. It is shaped by the company we keep, the setting in which we dine, the stories we tell ourselves about what we are eating. A glass of wine sipped in solitude may taste different from the same wine shared among friends, laughter echoing across the table. A humble bowl of rice, eaten in hunger, can be more delicious than the richest feast when the spirit is sated. The philosopher David Hume once argued that aesthetic judgments of beauty, taste, art depend on the cultivation of refined sensibilities, honed by experience and reflection. There is wisdom in this. To appreciate the full spectrum of flavor is to become attuned not only to the signals of the tongue, but also to the harmonies of memory, context, and intention. The mystery of taste is thus not a puzzle to be solved, but a landscape to be explored. Each of us moves through this terrain in our own fashion, guided by the compass of biology, the map of culture, and the weather of personal history. Yet there are signposts along the way, moments of shared delight that unite us across distance and difference. The breaking of bread, the passing of a communal dish, the laughter that rises as a meal unfolds, these are the foundations of society, as essential in their own way as language or law. Food binds us together, but it also defines the boundaries of belonging. The flavors of home can become markers of identity, cherished or contested. Immigrants carry with them the tastes of distant kitchens, recreating lost worlds in unfamiliar places. Children rebel against the dishes of their parents, only to return to them years later, finding comfort in the very flavors they once rejected. Through these cycles of acceptance and resistance, taste becomes a means of negotiating who we are and who we wish to be. But taste is never static. It evolves, sometimes imperceptibly, as bodies age and circumstances change. The fiery heat that once thrilled may mellow into appreciation for subtler notes. The aversions of childhood may yield to the acquired pleasures of bitterness or funk. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein once remarked that if a lion could speak, we would not understand him, for his world would be too different from ours. So too with taste. To know another's palate is to glimpse their world, but never to inhabit it entirely. Even within the self, taste is a moving target, shaped by experience, expectation, and context. The same food, eaten in different moods or settings, may reveal unexpected facets. A meal shared at the end of a long journey tastes different from one eaten in haste, just as the first fruits of spring carry a promise that no imported produce can match. The act of tasting is thus a form of attention, a way of being present to the world and to oneself. There is an ethics to taste as well. What we choose to eat affects not only our own bodies, but also the wider web of life. The pleasure of a perfectly ripe strawberry is entangled with the labor of those who grew and picked it, the health of the soil in which it was grown, the flows of water and sunlight that nourished it. To eat is to participate in a network of relationships extending far beyond the plate. As we become more aware of these connections, taste becomes not only a private delight, but also a form of responsibility. In recent years, the study of flavour has taken on new urgency as traditions shift and global challenges mount. The loss of biodiversity, the industrialization of agriculture, the homogenization of diets, all threaten to narrow the palette of tastes available to future generations. Yet there is hope in the resilience of food cultures, in the creativity of cooks who revive forgotten ingredients and reinvent old recipes. Flavour, it seems, is both fragile and enduring, capable of surviving upheaval and inspiring renewal. As we ponder the meaning of taste, we are drawn inevitably to the simple act of eating, a gesture repeated countless times over a lifetime, yet never quite the same. In the swirl of soup, the snap of fresh greens, the slow melt of chocolate on the tongue, there is a universe of sensation, memory, and meaning. To eat with attention is to participate in a miracle, the transformation of the world into the self and the self into the world. Perhaps then the philosophy of flavour is not a doctrine to be learned, but a practice to be cultivated. It invites us to be curious, to try new things, to savour the familiar with fresh eyes. It calls us to gratitude for the abundance and diversity of the edible world, to humility before the limits of our own perception, and to generosity in sharing meals with others. The next time you sit down to eat, pause for a moment. Attend to the colours and aromas, the textures and sounds. Let your mind wander to the places and people that made this meal possible, to the hands that prepared it, to the histories encoded in every bite. Taste slowly, and let the boundaries between body and world, memory and sensation, begin to blur. In that space of mindful eating, you may find not only pleasure, but also a glimmer of understanding, a glimpse of the mystery that makes each meal, however humble, a work of art. And still, the question lingers, what is it, in the end, that makes something delicious? Is it the dance of molecules on the tongue, the symphony of senses in the brain, the echo of childhood kitchens, or the warmth of laughter shared across a table? The answer, perhaps, is all of these, and something more, elusive as the scent of bread just out of reach, or the memory of a meal long past. It is in this unresolved, ever-unfolding question that the true wonder of taste resides. As the night deepens and the world quiets, let your mind drift through the landscapes of flavour, savouring not only the tastes themselves, but the stories, questions, and connections they evoke. Each meal a doorway, every flavour a whisper of mystery, calling you onward into the endless adventure of being alive. As our journey through the shifting symphony of taste gently drifts to a close, we float like a comet tail fading into the hush of space, savouring the quiet magic of flavours unfolding within. Let your thoughts settle softly, and when you are ready to wander among more dreamtime mysteries, return with me beneath the velvet sky for another gentle voyage.